One other great thing we can get from inheritance is the fact that we can also override certain behaviors. Because remember, this microphone here has its own properties, which we inherit in our lapel here. And we can add our properties, of course, add our own functions. There are times that we want to override turn on or any other method. For instance, I can create another function inside of our parent or superclass microphone here. I can say func make sound like that. I'm not going to enter anything, no parameter at all. This one here is going to just say print microphone making sound. Okay, so I can come down here after inside of our lapel. I can come outside here. I can say lapel 1. I can call lapel, let's say make sound. If I run this, it's going to say microphone making sound. So it's very generic, and I can be more specific instead of just microphone. I can say something like pass the brand name. Let's use self, just like what I said. It's a good idea, even though it's not really necessary. Like that, self brand name, microphone making sound. Let's run this and see what's going to happen. So general brand microphone making sound. Okay, that's totally fine. Now what I can do here is I can create a variable here, say var lapel name is of type string, and I can make it to say lapel like that. Okay, and I can come down here and say, well, I want make sound function to be different than this one here. Okay, so what I can do, I can just go ahead and say something like this, make sound. Notice that there is a make sound, although if I hit enter, notice what happens. It says override because it knows that, okay, since lapel inherits from Microsoft, there is already a make sound method, right? Because we're inside of a class. And in this case here, if we're calling it inside here, that means we want to override it. We want to make it so that it's customized to this lapel class. In this case here, I can just go ahead and say print. I'm going to pass self.lapel name, right? So in this case here, I'm going to say making sound as self.lapel name like that. I haven't changed anything. We're calling making sound. Look what's going to happen. I'm going to run making sound as lapel. So it went ahead and override the make sound function because we said override func make sound. So at this point here in runtime, it's going to go ahead and say, oh, we're going to run the making sound. Oh, wait a minute. We have one at the top here from that we are inheriting from microphone. However, we're not going to call it because we said we want to override that function or that method. And hence, you see now it's going to go ahead and call this one as opposed to calling the make sound from our microphone. So you can see now we're able to customize our inherited classes with little to no work whatsoever. Now, there are times when we want to infer or refer to our microphone, which is the superclass, the parent class here at the top, want to infer its methods or properties. We can do that inside of our lapel stuff here. I can come down here and say super. Look at that. The moment you say super, it gives you super there, but also tells you it's of type microphone. So whatever's to the left is the type or the actual class. So super, you can say super dot, look at that. I can go ahead and get the make sound, show about, turn on, type, and so forth. Okay, so there are times we want to do that. For instance, make sound here, I can play around and say var super name, something like that. It's going to be equal to super dot, let's see, make sound. How about that? Okay, now I can actually use that and perhaps append something here and not as super name like that. In fact, let's make this instead of sound, we're going to say not as brand name like this, so we don't have that. Okay, so here it's going to say making sound as lapel name, which we created there, and not as super name, which is going to be the brand name. And right away we have this variable super name was never mutated, consider making it a let. There we go. So it just gives us some help here so that we can write efficient code. So now if I save this, or just come down here and run the make sound again, the override, making sound as lapel and not as a general brand name. Okay, so we invoked the brand name, in this case a property of our superclass. So whenever we want to get the actual value from our superclass or property or method, whatever it is that we want, we can always use super to go and get that particular value. Now, this concept of inheritance and classes is a very important one because you will see, or you have seen in previous videos where we were actually working on SwiftUI directly, right? There's a lot of this kind of syntax here. There's a lot of inheritance and so forth. Let's go ahead and take a look real quick. If you look at this piece of code here, you notice that this is actually SwiftUI. You see here it says SwiftUI, but the syntax is the same. In this case here, we don't have a class, we have a struct, which we will talk in a bit here, but structs and classes are pretty much the same thing. There are minor advantages of using struct. Again, we'll talk about in the next videos and so. But you can see here now, you understand, if I say struct or class, name the class name and colon, and then view, what does that mean? That means this content view here inherits from the view, right? So this being a struct, a class in one way or the other, and has its types and so many other things. Another example here, we have this body, colon, we have this keyword sum, we haven't looked at it, but then we see view. So that means this is of type view. And then we have this closure here, which essentially means we can return whatever it's inside there, and it's going to show on our screen, right? So these are, of course, examples of inheritance at work. Now you also notice in this case here, we're passing in this object here, vStack, we pass alignment. These are properties or parameters that we're passing. So we say alignment, that's the name of our property, and we pass an object or a modifier in this case, right? It's a function that we say dot and get the center. We say dot and we pass then a modifier like that. Okay, let's go back to our Swift code. So the next thing we are going to talk about is structures or structs. You will see that structures or structs are essentially the same as classes, but there are small differences here and there, and structs are actually used a lot in SwiftUI or in Swift in general because they tend to be a little bit faster and easy to work with. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about structs in the next videos.